Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prissy.
May you please introduce yourselves to our audience? I'll start with you, Mandata.
Okay, so you don't mind me with my video off, right?
No, it's okay.
Okay, so my name is Mandata Mlojwa. I'm a young woman, very passionate about everything democracy governance. So my interest is how do we get women and young people meaningfully contributing to those decisions and policy making processes that influence their daily lives. So I work for a creative arts and media organization called Magamba Network.
Okay, thank you, Mandata. Ketiwe.
Okay, my name is Ketue Matutu. I'm from Youth for Innovation Trust. I am standing in for Tando Kwenji.
Okay, thank you. So to start our conversation, I would like to hear your thoughts, your sentiments on the documentary that you watched. What were your impressions?
So I'll just jump in first. I think for me, it left me so sad and broken because I think for me, it was this whole idea, Wuti, it's not just young people that we interviewed or young people in Bulayo. It's actually a crisis across the country. And I think that's one thing that really pained me, to just look at young people and see how much of potential, is being lost, and how much hope, you know, has been lost in our communities. And if young people are the future, for me, that got me really worried, where I'm saying, where do we move from here if our young people are in this space?
Okay, for me, I think it was the fact that most people, like especially at they were saying it was because of peer pressure and all that, and I'm just worried ukuthi ezikolo zankhona people are just, peer pressure yankhona ibathatha nzima. And the other thing that caught my attention was that guy obesity when he
Ketiwe, hi. Hello. Ketiwe, we've lost you there. Hi. Ketiwe. Okay. I think we've lost Ketiwe.
It's probably the network.
Yeah, it's
a little bit hectic, yeah.
So maybe I can continue with you. Maybe she'll join in.
Yes.
So we know that drug abuse has always been existent in our communities among you. Would you say COVID-19 has worsened the situation? I mean, there's so much stress, poverty, unemployment, and the youth are trying to escape the harsh realities of life, and they are not going to school. Would you say COVID-19 has worsened the situation?
Well, I can't really say it has worsened the situation. It might have to some degree, but I think the major, because when I was looking at most of the guys that were speaking in the documentary, someone who dates back, Wuti, I started using drugs or drinking alcohol or doing this in 2012. And a lot of them will trace it to poverty. There's one child that really spoke hard, like to me, Ote, and when I finished school and I was out of that financial support from my parents and things got hectic, I think that just hit me in a different way, because a lot of us, when you step out of school, it's not everyone who's guaranteed to if you pass, you proceed to university. If you don't pass, you can go to school again. Parents and the economic situation kind of puts us in a space where it's almost like a dead end for everyone. And that kind of worried me. So I think for the longest time, the environment has been cultivating that kind of toxicity that makes it easy for young people to think drugs are an outlet. What COVID has allowed us to do now, because we're all confined to our homes because of this lockdown thing, it means we now see our kids are spending more time at home. And when they're spending more time and they're not at school, it's even worse now because abasa school and things like that. So when they're spending more time in the communities around us, it's becoming a bit more clearer. Okay, this is, the everyday life. So I think COVID, in a sense, kind of, well, because it makes things worse economically. But I think Zimbabwean economy, for the longest time, COVID or no COVID, the pressure is just too much for young people. And I think that's where most of this is coming from.
Okay, yeah, I get you there. And would you say maybe let's say the lockdown that has been there, whereby everyone is encouraged to stay at home, there's less peer pressure now, no physical company of peers, no influence from friends, no more visit parties, youth have no access to drugs. Do you think somehow there is a positive effect that has been brought about by the lockdown, or we still on the same page?
Not even. Like, I think the lockdown didn't even help at all, because I've been joking with friends, Uguti, the lockdown is only lockdown CBDs. If you get into Harare CBD, if you get to Bulawayo CBD, it's low activity, it's not the usual. But life continues. It's even worse now because I can't spend the day at home. So next door. Also, there was a lady that spoke in the documentary, was talking about how the violence, in the way they respond to their parents. So can you imagine trying to force a child like that to spend a day at home? So I think COVID actually makes it a bit more crazier because they're confined. When you confine someone to space, it's a very dangerous kind of situation. So I think now there's even more access because and like someone was mentioning, you find this, they're sold everywhere. You can send a child to go buy, things like that. So I don't think that there's a positive effect that the COVID situation or the lockdown has had on this whole drug abuse scenario that we have. If at all, I think it has given young people more kind of pressure, because now it's worse, lockdown means those that have something to do, Nga ule Wi-Fi endlini, nga ule, your data or lile TV, amagetsa khona, amanzi akhona. It's easy to lock down because you're just eating, watching TV, studying online. But a majority of these young people are in communities, emakasi, where amanzi is a problem. So I'm having to figure out a plan. Amagetsa ahamba, when my amagetsa are not there, what kind of recreational facility is there for these young people? Escolo, as well, as I mentioned, without data, you can't study online. It's a bit of a struggle. Some of them don't even have the kind of digital devices that allow them to stream on YouTube. So I think it makes it worse because now you're forcing them into a space where they can't be creative in the way they're used to being creative. But you're also forcing them to just live a set life. I eat breakfast, spend the entire day within the yard, or at least so I think it kind of makes it a little bit more, I don't know, hectic.
Yeah, probably. It makes it hectic. And now the pressure that they are having at home, which I at home with parents, also when some of them they their parents when they are being told to do things. And then there is something that I picked from the documentary. I would like to hear your comments. Like, there are those who are selling drugs, and they are saying they are doing it as a means of survival. Could we justify the selling of drugs? Looking at the Zimbabwe's economic situation, many people are unemployed, and now selling of drugs is being used as a means of survival. What are your comments on that?
I think for me, it's that basic principle, whatever means of production we encourage in our community, it should not cost us the future. It should not negatively impact on the young people, which in turn actually negatively impacts on the community in the short and the long run. So I think for me, because that's the truth, it's the reality we're in, where omunye umuntu ujala ukuthengisa emsikeni, omunye ujala ukuhamba cashier, this, whatever. But now on lockdown, and the unemployment is even crazier because I can't even get the dollar I was getting emsikeni. So you find that I'm staying at home and someone tells you, I'm selling this at home. So it's the only way for me. But for me, it's problematic in the sense that it's giving you something, but it's killing, we're losing much more than I don't think they should be at any point in our communities where we justify this kind of economic activity. Also because ama drugs law, they're illegal, right?
Yes.
And also the other thing, we can't control. There was a health practitioner who spoke on the documentary. We mentioned our institutions, our health institutions do not have the capacity, the skills and the resources to respond to some of the impact of these things on those young people. So it makes it even worse. You've got money for your family, or you're sleeping today with Lily's child and things like that. But there is a bigger problem that's been created where the health facilities can't respond. No one can help. So for me, it's not okay. But then I think it comes back to say the problem is beyond just these young people that are using the drugs. It's also beyond those young people that are selling the drugs. They have a moral responsibility, yes. But it also comes back to the community itself, the leadership in the community, the leadership in our country to say, what is the state doing, to facilitate a kind of environment that empowers people to have jobs, to have young people accessing education, even in a lockdown. So if we're able to address some of those things, I feel like it comes back to kind of address, because there are job opportunities and they decide to opt to selling drugs. There's a big problem there. But as you're looking at it now, there's nothing for them to do. So they'll always use that excuse to say, Anila, another plan. So I think we need to continuously then take it up to say, how do we work with it, or how does the state work to ensure that the environment becomes conducive for people to have jobs, or at least function in their normal economic activities?
Okay, you already answered the question that I was about to ask you on the role of the government, the community, and parents in dealing with this drug epidemic. So about institutions, health institutions being overwhelmed with a lot of youth who are now having reacting to probably having mental problems. Should our health systems have some form of mechanisms that they can put in place for young people so that they probably stay away from drugs or something like
that? Definitely. I mean, the health institutions have an equal responsibility with almost all of us in the community to say they need to play their part to ensure that they have some form of but the research properly. Where do they get? Because it goes back to leadership as well. The state of our health institutions reflecting the state of our government, but also just coming down to say, for young people, it's the absence of alternatives. When you don't have alternatives to offer young people, it's difficult, for you to tell them to stop, because you say, stop this, do this, right? So if there's nothing to do, or whatever it is that is available for me kind of gets me more depressed, or it pushes me to, like all those things that they're experiencing that are pushing them towards drug abuse. So I think we need to, it's a holistic approach that involves everyone. The state playing its part, health institutions empowered by the state through access, like resources, the kind of budget that enables them to function. But also, my other issue that I always come back to ask, especially around issues of access to drugs, like drugs, ideally, they don't just enter the country. Mm-hmm. There are certain, industries that bring in these drugs. There are certain industries that distribute these drugs, including these health practitioners. So you discover that a majority of those people that distribute some of these drugs are actually these health professionals. So it's issues of corruption within the health system itself to say, ama drugs, these are drugs designated for certain things, but because someone has access, they take them home and they sell to those young people. So that's why I'm saying to everyone almost has a responsibility. Luana also special, the state availing resources, but are they going to be managed the right way, you know? And even in our communities, we know there's people that sell drugs, you know? Ulamama communities where there is a name for this person. But because everyone seems to be benefiting from this economic activity of this one person, you discover they get away with someone will be a drug dealer for the longest time. And I think it's like a holistic kind of approach where it's everyone asking themselves, what is my role in perpetuating this culture? But also, what is my responsibility in actually helping to mitigate some of those impacts, or even the drug abuse itself, young people accessing drugs, young people using drugs, and the health and there's other psychological results of that drug abuse.
Oh, okay. Looking at just looking around in Zimbabwe, when we're looking at civil society organizations, do you think we have enough of them that are doing awareness raising or advocating for effective strategies for this epidemic? Are civil society organizations playing their part in the fight against the epidemic?
I definitely think that something is being done by different civil society organizations. I think everyone is like in different ways, people are trying. I remember in 2016, I used to volunteer for like Youth for Christ. They used to have this young people program where they would go into schools as a creative artist, would go into schools, you know, public places, churches and things like that. And just educating young people through poetry, drama, music, and dance and all those things. I think in that way, this is a Christian institution. They're actually helping to, you know, kind of raise awareness. And then I remember there was an institution as well, I can't remember its name. Back when we were in high school and primary school, they used to distribute these small booklets. That they were talking about drugs, different types of drugs that are there, the side effects. It was these fancy books that were really colorful and well, because of that color and all that flamboyance, Sasi, you know, would read and stuff like that. So I think different people from then, I've seen a lot of people do these road shows and all these crazy things that people are doing. And I think from the documentary as well, there's a woman that mentioned ukuthi abantwana bethu abangamankazana, they're prostituting. Abafana, they're doing this. And awareness was done. That's one thing that kind of stuck for me, which was saying something was done to sensitize these young people. And even in the conversation that these young people were having, their stories and their experiences, a lot of them know the impact of these drugs. Mm-hmm. A lot of them know what they are going on a downward spiral, like through this, you know, drug abuse. But it comes back again to say, potentially it might be an issue of alternatives that don't exist for these young people to say, I'm depressed or I'm in this state because when you would say poverty or there's other things that they're mentioning. So if I choose not to abuse those drugs, if I choose not to drink alcohol, if I choose not to do this, what is the alternative that exists for me? You know, that is more ideal kind of. So I think that's the main thing where civil society is playing its part, but there's a bigger part than civil society. Civil society can only be as effective as the environment enables it to be. So you realize, until we have an environment that, you know, provides or something, if civil society is raising awareness, advocating for this, the government is also ensuring that there's this, the society is making sure that people that perpetuate this culture kind of are brought to justice and things like, if everyone is playing a part, the environment becomes an ecosystem that supports young people. And that's something that we don't have.
Okay, you mentioned something that I also noted on the documentary. This drug epidemic, its effects on girls and boys. I know probably the effect and the impact is somehow different, considering that women or girls in every situation, they are the ones who are mostly affected. Do you think this epidemic is still the same, that probably girls are the ones who will like aba-affectwa kakhulu nge-situation yangikhona than abantu abangabafana?
I think we would have to potentially just evaluate our statistics that exist in terms of how many young people that are male actually, like how much of the population of young people abusing drugs are male and female.
Okay.
And then once we get that, you kind of get a picture of how it is at the level of consumption of those drugs. But I think the extra part when it comes to women, beyond just the statistics and allow, you then ask yourself, would abafazi are not just affected in the sense of them consuming drugs and the psychological health effects of drugs and all those things, but it's also an issue of when a man is drunk or has abused drugs and is not in the state of mind that enables him to, act responsibly. It's a woman that gets abused. It's a girl that gets raped, And this guy's mentioned a lot of instances where they would drink at home or my parties loud, they bring girls over and all those things. It's a young girl that's getting pregnant after that unprotected sex. Both of them are affected in terms of STIs and the spread of HIV and all those things. But there are other things that then come up to say, Umfana will not get pregnant. It's a young girl getting pregnant, potentially doesn't know who it is that got her pregnant. It could have been rape and all those things. But because I feel like I was in that space and drinking myself or abusing these drugs, I almost feel responsible even if I was raped and things like that. So I think it has this dynamics when it comes to women that kind of don't affect men directly. And I think if you look at ama causes, kakulu, I think for me that was the biggest thing where if it's issues of, for instance, uthi akulam savings, and that means good men are spending more time at home. And if you check it in the COVID situation, there was a lot of gender-based violence cases during this pandemic, Men are spending more time at home. Women that are the majority of people that sell MCG and abachona besetan betting some banana and all those things. It means I'm now spending time at home with an abuser. So abuser law is consuming drugs. So abuser law is the man of the house. He dictates how things are done. So I think it does to some extent come back to bite women a little bit more than it does with men. But I think it's very important for us to base it on statistics. I don't have the actual statistics for gender in terms of the impact of COVID, of drug abuse in them. But I think it's something that we should definitely check out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Ketua, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
My network is a problem.
Oh, okay, noted. Prabha, may I hear your comments? We are talking here about the impact of this drug abuse on women and men. Watching that documentary, can I hear your comments? Do you think that drug epidemic affects women more than men, or is still the same?
Honestly, I think it affects both ngokufananayo because uma thatha ama-drugs kuyam-affecta psychologically ukuthi like when you get addicted to drugs i-way of thinking yakho isiba affected, and to some extent uqasa ukuba you can even become an abuser anti usuchaya, because sometimes you do all these things ungaboni that I'm not justifying ukuthi umuntu uyabethe uyenza ama-drugs, but I'm just saying ukuthi sometimes ama-drugs drive a person ukuthi eyenze ezinye izinto. And abafazi, women, I think it's difficult having a husband or drug addict, a husband who abuses ama-drugs. Because, for example, I'll tell you, I had this story. This friend of mine was saying she dated a guy owayesenza ibronco, and the guy would zone out, after doing that. We are stick, I think they say we stick or something like that. And I feel like usule husband endlini, and uba lama episodes and allow when he's now high, say stick and stuff like that. It's just it's difficult.
Okay, thank you, Ketu. As we wrap up, I would like to hear your comments on probably what would you recommend as part of in sort of advocacy for this drug epidemic. What would you recommend? What are the strategies that we should put in place probably to end the epidemic, if there are any? Mantate?
The-
Hello?
Ketso, you can go first.
Ketso, you can go first, it's okay.
Oh, okay. I was saying, I feel like there should be more rehabilitation centers. Khathesi umuntu osebulawayo, are there ngicela ukubuza first, are there any rehabilitation centers here in Bulawayo like that are free? Because most of those people that are abusing ama-drugs don't even have that money yokuthi nxa ungathiwa sesiya ku-rehab uyakwanisa ukubhadala the fee yankhona ukuthi ehlale. So are there any free rehabilitation centers for drug abusers and stuff like that here in Bulawayo? Singasakhuluma ukuthi kuyathiwa phuma uye somewhere, maybe Harare or somewhere else. Sengikhuluma nga-locally khonapha. Are there any?
Not that I know of. Mantate, do you know of any?
No, I don't. But I was once in a conversation and someone mentioned their couple. So I'll just follow up to check what those are. But I think the other challenge that we have, especially around the issue of rehab, is the fact that in Zim, when it comes to drug abuse and the effects, there is this general tendency to link this whole drug abuse with mental health, you know. So normally, if there is anything related to that, you discover that abantu laba bahanjiswa engutsheni.
Okay.
So already, for me, that's a bit problematic because the kind of response, it's so fixated in that idea that mental health is the big problem. So that's where they're going to go. But someone is arguing, when they go to those ingutsheni or psychiatric hospitals wherever in the country, you discover that bafika be pure amapilisi in the oldest days. So umuntu nxa pure amapilisi to fix the problem of dependence on amapilisi, it doesn't make sense for me. So I'm not too sure. I guess it's something that we can also try to figure out. But yeah, we still have a need for more.
Okay. Kechiwe?
No, I was about to say the same thing that Mantate is saying. Eyokuthi like nxa umuntu ehanjiswe engutsheni kutsho ukuthi sesiyalungiswa ngamaphilisi futhi. And I watched this clip on Facebook where this other guy, drug addict, was saying when you give them pills for ukuthi get rid of drug abuse, you're pushing him to so at the end of the day, he gets dependent on the pills and so
And Mantate, any other comments or recommendations that you would?
I think for me, it comes back to that holistic approach to the problem here, drug abuse. Just looking at it as being bigger than the problem of the young people that are actually abusers of pharma drugs, to say, what are the enablers around those young people that make it so easy? I remember in the documentary, there was an issue of access. That was a big issue where someone was saying you could even send a small child. You know, as children grow, even from the movies we watch, you know, and it becomes a thing where a child starts abusing drugs at an early age. So it's that responsibility of not just the person that's abusing the drugs, but as a community ourselves to say, when umntwana is doing certain things, do we just talk and some umntwana lo says, or umntwana lo seliwulo, umntwana lo seyilokho, and just leave it there? Oh, we take responsibility. But then also coming back to the issue of the local council as well. I think one of the things that has worked in a lot of countries is providing recreational facilities that kind of empower young people, you know, indawo ezile that facilitate creativity, that tap on the energy of young people, you know, to meaningfully recreate. So it's that thing that we don't have. So AMA councils, for instance, in every community, they're responsible for AMA parks, they're responsible for AMA youth centers, even AMA gym makers, you know, all those things that they wish they could have, because it means they'll spend more time in those places. And you discover that there's less pressure to kind of be doing these other things. But also going up to say the government still has that bigger responsibility to kind of facilitate an environment that allows young people to access education, to allow young people to access economic opportunities, jobs, vocational skills, and all those other things. Because I think as long as we don't provide these alternatives that can help young people to live lives that are outside this, demand for drugs, I think we will not fix the thing. So there is need for that. And then also the last thing maybe that I would want to say, Uti, the role of the media as well, and civil society to raise awareness. Uti, WhatsApp lapa, because that's where the jokes go around. Jokes are normally jokes that are oriented, that teach young people to consume. But if we take responsibility and say we want to use the internet, if we know how to design cartoons, those, I don't know what they call them, but doing cartoons, doing poetry, doing comedy, and all these things that young people consume every day, but center it around empowering young people and dealing up with this cliche, stop drug abuse in a song. I mean, find creative ways that make it fun for young people to play those songs outside that particular campaign. And there was a last thing that I wanted to say, but well, I think I might have forgotten it.
Oh, okay. We have come to an end for discussion, and from what I've noted is that everyone has a role to play in this epidemic. The government, the civil society organizations, the media, the community, parents, everyone has a role to play. I would like to thank you, ladies, for coming through.
Thank you for having us.